Imagine a stage. The lights dim, the audience holds its breath. A great curtain sways before us, hiding what lies beyond. One by one, the curtains are drawn back, and with each reveal, we believe we are finally seeing the truth. Yet each new unveiling shows only another layer of illusion. We live our lives inside this theater. The actors are our thoughts, the props are our memories, and the script is written by culture, language, and belief. But what if the show we're watching is not the ultimate reality? What if every veil we lift is only another filter shaped by the mind? Modern psychology tells us that perception is not a mirror of the world, but a construction carefully stitched together by the brain. Our senses don't reveal reality as it is. They reveal reality as we are. This is the journey we will take together, through the 7 veils of perception, exploring how philosophy, science, and consciousness intertwine to shape the world we believe to be real. So, let the first curtain rise. When the curtain begins to rise, the first veil we encounter is the most obvious, yet the most deceiving: our senses. We trust our eyes to show us the world as it is, but vision is not truth, it is interpretation. Have you ever stared at an optical illusion, convinced you saw one shape, only to realize it was something else entirely? The famous gorilla experiment by Daniel Simons reveals this fragility. Participants, asked to count how many times a ball was passed, often failed to notice a man in a gorilla suit walking straight across the scene. Their eyes saw it, but their mind did not. This is the first veil, the illusion of sensory certainty. Our senses do not give us reality. They give us a story the brain can handle. The world is too vast, too complex, too overwhelming to perceive directly. So the mind edits, cuts, and pastes like a director shaping a film. What you believe is out there is already filtered, already staged. To lift this veil is to recognize that what you call reality is only a convenient version, never the full script. The second veil descends more quietly, and perhaps more powerfully: cultural conditioning. From the moment we are born, society hands us a script. We are told what is valuable, what is forbidden, what is beautiful, and what is shameful. These values are not universal truths. They are cultural agreements. A gesture of respect in one culture may be an insult in another. A sound considered music in one society may be dismissed as noise in another. Social psychology shows us how powerful this conditioning can be. Experiments on conformity, such as those by Solomon Asch, demonstrate that people will often deny their own perception just to align with the group. Imagine this. Even when your eyes clearly tell you that one line is longer than another, the pressure of others saying otherwise can convince you to doubt yourself. This is the second veil, the veil of culture. It shapes not just what we believe, but how we even see. And then behind the veil of culture, another curtain, the narrative of the ego. We all carry within us a central character, the I. But who is this I? Is it a fixed entity, or is it a story constantly being told and retold? Carl Jung spoke of archetypes, masks, and the personas we wear to navigate society. Modern neuroscience echoes this insight with studies of the default mode network, a set of brain regions most active when we think about ourselves, our past, or our future. In other words, much of our mental energy is devoted not to experiencing reality, but to maintaining the illusion of a coherent self. Think about it. The person you believed you were at age 10 is not the same person you are now. Memories have shifted, desires have evolved, and yet the mind weaves it all into a single, seamless identity. The ego is not a fixed entity, but a performance, a character on stage. To lift this veil is not to erase the self, but to see it as it truly is, a role, not the entire play. But even behind the mask of the ego, deeper shadows remain, emotions and traumas. Every experience we live carves pathways into the brain. A moment of joy, a wound of betrayal, a childhood memory, all become filters through which reality is colored. Two people can witness the same event, and one may see beauty while the other sees danger. Why? Because the past is always whispering into the present. Psychology and neuroscience reveal how profound this shaping can be. Trauma, for example, is not just a memory. It rewires the nervous system. The body keeps the score, as Bessel van der Kolk describes. Therapies like EMDR are practices that harness neuroplasticity show us that these imprints can be softened, reshaped, even healed. Yet until they act as invisible lenses. Joy may feel distant. Trust may feel impossible. Even love may feel unsafe. This is the fourth veil, the veil of emotional memory. And here lies a profound truth. The veils are not mistakes. They are survival strategies. Our senses simplify, so we are not overwhelmed. Our culture offers structure, so we are not lost. Our ego provides continuity, so we are not fragmented. Our emotions preserve lessons, so we are not harmed again. The veils protect us, but they also imprison us. The journey of consciousness is not to curse the veils, but to learn to see them. To know that when you react in anger, it may not be the world that is cruel, but a veil of memory shaping your vision. To know that when you feel separate from others, it may not be an eternal truth, but the mask of the ego playing its role. To know that when you cling to what your senses tell you, reality may still hold infinite unseen dimensions. Each veil we lift brings us closer not to an ultimate truth carved in stone, but to a more fluid awareness, an openness to the possibility that reality is far greater than what we have been told. And so, the curtains keep rising, one by one. As the stage deepens, the fifth veil begins to shimmer. It is perhaps the most invisible of all, because we are so certain of it. Time. We live as if time were a straight line, an arrow from past to present to future. But physics whispers another possibility. Time is not absolute, but relative. Einstein showed us that the ticking of a clock depends on speed and gravity. Neuroscience adds yet another twist. What we call now is not a direct experience of reality, but a reconstruction. The brain stitches together fragments from our senses with memories of the immediate past. By the time we experience the present moment, it has already slipped away. Memory, too, is not a recording, but a rewriting. Each time we recall an event, the memory is modified, reshaped by who we are now. Two siblings may argue about the same childhood moment, each convinced their version is true. Both are sincere, and both are wrong. This is the veil of time and memory. The illusion that the past is fixed, the present is solid, and the future is certain. To lift this veil is to awaken to impermanence, to realize that what we call reality is always in flux, always becoming. Beyond time lies the sixth veil, duality. Our minds are trained to divide, light and dark, good and evil, self and other. This binary lens is useful, even necessary for survival, but it is also limiting. Eastern philosophies have long taught that duality is a veil, not a truth. The yin and yang are not enemies. They are complements flowing into one another. In the West, psychology echoes this wisdom. Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny or reject. We label them bad and project them onto others, creating division. But in truth, shadow and light belong to the same whole. Neuroscience even shows that brain networks linked to empathy can be dulled when we perceive someone as part of the outgroup. The mind splits the world into us and them, reinforcing illusion. To lift this veil is not to erase differences, but to see them as expressions of a deeper unity. Just as waves rise and fall on the same ocean, the opposites we cling to are movements of one reality. The challenge is not to destroy duality, but to see through it, to understand that self and other are threads woven into the same fabric. And then, at last, we come to the seventh veil. It is not a veil like the others. It is the veil of unity, which paradoxically hides by its very presence what it also reveals. For behind all illusions, behind senses and culture, ego and trauma, time and duality, there is a deeper awareness, a vastness without edges. Mystics from every tradition speak of it. The Vedanta concept of Brahman, the Buddhist experience of sunyata, the mystical oneness described by Sufi poets. Modern science, in its own way, edges towards similar mysteries. Studies on meditation, near-death experiences, and even psychedelic research describe states of consciousness where the boundary between self and world dissolves. The individual feels not separate from reality, but identical with it. Imagine standing before the ocean, and instead of feeling small, you feel that you are the ocean. Imagine looking into the eyes of another person and realizing you're looking into a mirror. This is what lifting the final veil reveals. Not knowledge to be grasped, but a state of being to be experienced. And yet, unity is not a place we arrive. It is not a final truth to be owned. It is more like a horizon, always there, always inviting, always beyond. The purpose of the veils is not to keep us trapped, but to guide us in the dance of unveiling. Each curtain we lift shows us that the play of reality is far richer than we imagined. The question, then, is not whether the veils exist. The question is, how willing are we to look beyond them? Because perhaps reality is not about what is revealed when all curtains are gone. Perhaps reality is the theater itself, the stage, the lights, the audience, the story. Perhaps the truth is not behind the veils, but in the act of unveiling, in the courage to keep asking, keep seeing, keep awakening. So as the final curtain falls, the invitation remains. What veil are you ready to lift today? If the veils of reality obscure our vision, how do we begin to lift them? The traditions of the East have whispered answers for centuries. Sit still, breathe, observe, awaken. And today, psychology and neuroscience are beginning to confirm what sages intuited long ago. The first practice we must consider is deceptively simple: mindfulness. In essence, mindfulness is the art of paying attention, not to the past, not to the future, but to the immediacy of this moment. The breath entering and leaving the body, the sensation of a foot pressing against the earth, the subtle flicker of thought before it dissolves into silence. It may seem trivial, yet research in positive psychology reveals profound effects. Mindfulness strengthens emotional regulation, reduces stress, and even enhances immune function. More importantly, for our journey, it allows us to glimpse how the mind constructs reality. When you are mindful, you see the veil at work. You notice how a sound triggers a judgment, how a memory colors perception, how the ego rushes into label and control. Each moment of attention is a tiny unveiling, a glimpse of the stage behind the curtain. But mindfulness is not the only doorway. There are moments, rare and luminous, when life itself carries us beyond the self, into what psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi called the state of flow. Flow is that experience when time disappears, when effort feels effortless, when action and awareness merge into one. An artist painting, a dancer moving, a surfer catching a wave. In these moments, the veil of ego is suspended. There is no separate self evaluating, no narrator in the mind keeping score. There is only the act, fully alive, fully present. Csikszentmihalyi described flow as the secret to happiness, not because it eliminates challenge, but because it transforms challenge into play. In flow, we are not burdened by the weight of identity. We are immersed in being. And here lies a clue. Perhaps the veils can be lifted not by withdrawal from life, but by entering it so completely that separation dissolves. Science provides its own perspective on these states. Neuroscientists studying meditation have found that deep practice reduces activity in the default mode network, that constellation of brain regions tied to self-referential thought, to daydreaming, to the endless replay of the ego's story. When this network quiets, the grip of the self loosens. Meditation practitioners often describe feelings of spaciousness, of unity, of clarity. And brain scans reveal that these are not merely poetic metaphors, but measurable shifts in neural activity. Consider this. For most of us, the default mode network is like the stage director, constantly organizing the play of the mind. It tells us who we are, where we belong, what we must fear, what we must desire. But when meditation silences this director, even briefly, the play transforms. The props vanish, the spotlight softens, and we glimpse the raw presence of awareness itself. What is striking is how ancient and modern perspectives converge. The Buddhist speaks of no self. The neuroscientist measures a reduction in self-referential activity. The mystic describes union with the whole. The psychologist observes flow states where time and ego dissolve. Different languages, perhaps, but pointing toward the same mystery, that our sense of reality is not fixed, but malleable, that the veils can shift. And this recognition is not merely philosophical. It is practical. Imagine facing a moment of anxiety. Mindfulness teaches you to pause, to feel the breath, to watch the thought without fusing with it. Neuroscience shows us that this pause calms the amygdala, reducing the grip of fear. Imagine being consumed by self-doubt. Flow reminds us that immersion in a creative act can quiet the critic, replacing analysis with participation. Imagine being trapped in rumination about the past. Meditation quiets the default mode network, softening the endless replay of memory. Each of these practices, mindfulness, flow, meditation, is like learning to gently draw back a curtain. Not tearing, not destroying, but opening. They do not promise instant enlightenment. They offer instead moments of transparency, glimpses through the fabric of illusion. And perhaps that is enough. For in those glimpses, we remember that the play is not the whole of reality, but only a performance within it. The science is still young. Researchers admit they cannot fully explain why meditation alters perception, why flow feels transcendent, why mindfulness shifts our very sense of self. But perhaps explanation is not the point. Perhaps the point is experience, to step into the present, to dissolve into the act, to sit in silence and discover that the silence is not empty, but alive. In this way, modern science and ancient wisdom converge on the same invitation: to awaken here and now, to see the veils for what they are, to live not imprisoned by illusion, but illuminated by awareness. And so, as we continue this journey, we realize lifting the veils is not about escaping the theater. It is about watching the play with new eyes, eyes that see both the curtain and what lies beyond it. The veils of reality do not fall by accident. They are woven into our perception, stitched into our culture, carved into the mind by memory and emotion. Yet across centuries and civilizations, human beings have discovered ways to draw them back, to let in the light. Some of these ways are simple and universal. Others are radical and transformative. All of them share one purpose: to reveal that what we call reality is far more fluid than it seems. The most accessible doorway is mindfulness and meditation. To sit, to breathe, to observe without judgment. It seems too simple, even trivial. And yet, simplicity is precisely the key. When we close our eyes and notice the breath, we are training the mind to watch itself. A thought arises: I should be doing something else. Normally, we follow it blindly. In mindfulness, we notice it, let it pass, and return to presence. Each time we do this, we weaken the veil of automatic identification. Neuroscience confirms this. Studies show that regular meditation decreases activity in the amygdala, reducing reactivity to stress, while increasing gray matter in regions linked to attention and empathy. Meditation does not erase the veils. It teaches us to see through them. Instead of being consumed by anger, we notice anger. Instead of drowning in desire, we observe desire. The veil remains, but it becomes translucent. Yet even without meditation, psychology reveals that our perception is far from reliable. Experiments with visual and auditory illusions demonstrate just how easily the mind can be deceived. A simple image can appear to flip between two shapes. A sound can be heard as one word or another, depending on what we expect. These illusions remind us of a humbling truth. The brain is not a passive recorder of reality, but an active creator. It predicts, fills in gaps, edits, crafting a version of the world it believes will make sense. The famous McGurk effect is one example. When we hear one syllable but see lips forming another, the brain merges them into a third sound altogether. What we experience is not what exists, but what the brain thinks exists. In this way, every illusion is a small unveiling, a playful crack in the armor of certainty. It tells us, if the mind can be tricked so easily, perhaps all perception is, in some sense, an illusion. To move beyond the tricks of the senses, humanity has long turned to contemplative practices from the East. In Zen, the student is invited to sit in stillness, watching the arising and passing of thought until the very distinction between thinker and thought dissolves. In Vedanta, teachers speak of neti-neti, not this, not that, a process of peeling away every identity, every label, until only pure awareness remains. In Vipassana meditation, practitioners observe sensations with such precision that they discover the impermanence of all experience, seeing reality as a flow rather than a fixed thing. These traditions may differ in language, but they converge in insight that the self we cling to is not the ultimate reality, and that awareness itself is deeper than the stories we live by. Each is a method of lifting veils, not through force, but through direct experience. In recent decades, a new frontier has opened: the emerging sciences of consciousness. Researchers are exploring how altered states, induced by meditation, technology, or even carefully supervised psychedelics, can shift perception in profound ways. Clinical studies with psilocybin and MDMA have shown not only therapeutic benefits for trauma and depression, but also experiences of unity, ego dissolution, and spiritual insight that mirror descriptions from mystical traditions. Neurofeedback and brain-computer interfaces add another dimension. By giving people real-time information about their brain activity, they learn to consciously modulate states of awareness, calming restless patterns or enhancing focus. For the first time in history, we are beginning to engineer access to states once thought the exclusive domain of monks and mystics. Of course, these methods are not without risk. Psychedelics, for example, can destabilize as easily as they can heal if used without guidance. But the fact that modern science is even exploring such frontiers reveals something profound. The hunger to lift the veils is universal, timeless, and now being validated by data as much as by tradition. What unites all these techniques, mindfulness, illusions, contemplative practice, new science, is not the promise of a final truth, but the invitation to see differently, to realize that perception is not fixed, that identity is not solid, that what we call the real is only one of many possible stages. Perhaps the veils are not obstacles at all, but invitations. They ask us, will you believe the story unquestioned, or will you step closer to the curtain? Will you remain in the comfort of the script, or will you risk the unknown of what lies beyond? To lift a veil is to accept both wonder and uncertainty. It is to live with humility, knowing that what we see may not be all there is. And it is to live with courage, daring to explore the edges of awareness where science and spirituality meet. The techniques differ, the experiences vary, but the message is the same. Reality is not a single stage, but a theater of infinite curtains. And each breath, each experiment, each practice is a hand upon the fabric, gently drawing it back. The veils of reality are not abstract philosophy. They are lived, measured, and even documented in laboratories. If we wish to understand how perception can shift, it helps to look not only at theories, but at the stories, both personal and scientific, that reveal the cracks in our ordinary sense of the real. One such story begins high in the Himalayas, with the rhythmic breath of Tibetan monks. For centuries, these monks have claimed that meditation can reshape the mind, expand awareness, even transform the body. To many in the West, these were mystical exaggerations. That is, until neuroscientist Richard Davidson brought a group of monks into his laboratory. Davidson, intrigued by the possibility that meditation might leave measurable footprints in the brain, connected the monks to EEG machines, mapping their brainwaves. What he found astonished the scientific community. During meditation, the monks produced gamma waves, brain rhythms associated with heightened awareness and integration, intensities never before recorded. Their neural patterns didn't simply quiet the mind. They suggested an entirely different mode of consciousness. Imagine, decades of contemplative practice had sculpted their very neurology, lifting veils not just in perception, but in physiology. Where others see distraction and chaos, the monks revealed stillness and clarity written in the language of neurons. Davidson's study became a milestone, proof that the inner journey leaves outer traces. But stories of veils lifting are not limited to monastic caves. In recent years, clinical studies using psychedelics, such as psilocybin, have reported profound experiences of ego dissolution. Participants often describe a sense of self melting away, replaced by an overwhelming connection to something larger: nature, the cosmos, or pure awareness itself. One patient, battling depression for decades, described her session as becoming part of the music of existence. For the first time, the narrative of self, filled with fear and sorrow, dissolved, leaving only a sense of belonging. Weeks later, her symptoms of depression had dramatically lessened. Brain imaging explained part of the mystery. During these ego-dissolving experiences, activity in the default mode network, the seat of self-referential thought, dropped dramatically. Just as meditation had shown, loosening the grip of the ego revealed an entirely new landscape of consciousness. For scientists, this was not just a mystical claim, but an observable shift. For patients, it was life-changing. Yet perhaps the most humbling evidence of illusion comes not from monks or psychedelics, but from the tricks our minds play on us every day. Consider the checker shadow illusion, designed by vision scientist Edward Adelson. Two squares on a chessboard, one in the light, one in the shadow, appear to be different shades, but they are, in fact, the same color. Even when we are told this, even when we measure it, the illusion refuses to let go. The brain insists on interpreting the image in a way that makes sense, even if it contradicts reality. Or take the famous invisible gorilla experiment by Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris. Participants were asked to count how many times players in white shirts passed a basketball. So focused were they on the task that half of them failed to notice a man in a gorilla suit walking through the scene, pounding his chest. The study revealed a startling truth. Our perception is not as complete as we believe. Attention shapes reality, and what we do not attend to simply vanishes from awareness. These illusions, visual, attentional, auditory, remind us that reality is a negotiation between the world and the mind. We do not see what is. We see what our brains predict, filter, and construct. What links the monks, the patients, and the illusions is a single thread: the fragility of certainty. We assume that the way we see the world is the way the world is. But the evidence tells another story. Perception is flexible, fluid, shaped by practice, by chemistry, by expectation. For some, this realization can feel unsettling. If reality is not solid, where can we stand? But perhaps the lesson is not despair, but liberation. If perception can change, then suffering can change. If identity is constructed, then identity can be reconstructed. If the veils are woven, then they can be unwoven. The stories remind us that lifting veils is not reserved for mystics in distant lands. It happens in labs, in therapy rooms, in everyday moments when we realize we've been fooled by a shadow or a sound. Each story is an invitation to question, to observe, to remain open to the possibility that reality is more mysterious, more layered than we were taught to believe. And in the end, perhaps this is the most important unveiling of all, that reality is not something fixed to be discovered, but something alive to be experienced. The veils do not hide the truth. They are part of it, inviting us to dance with mystery rather than cling to certainty. When we speak of lifting the veils, it is tempting to imagine a final unveiling, the last curtain falling, revealing an ultimate, absolute truth. But perhaps that image itself is just another illusion. Perhaps the beauty of the journey is not in arriving at some final destination, but in discovering how each veil transforms the way we see. Every time a curtain parts, the stage changes. What once seemed solid melts into possibility. What once felt permanent reveals its fragility. We begin to understand that reality is not a fixed monolith, but a dance of appearances endlessly shifting, endlessly alive. Think of the optical illusions we explored. Even after we know they deceive us, we still see the deception. The checkerboard squares still look different. The gorilla still disappears from our awareness when our focus narrows. The point is not to fix our perception, but to recognize its limits, to see that the illusion is part of the truth. In the same way, meditation, science, and ancient philosophy converge on a single insight. The goal is not to conquer illusion, but to see through it with clarity. To realize that the ego, the stories we tell ourselves, the cultural scripts we inherit are not lies, but lenses. And like any lens, they can either blur or sharpen the vision, depending on how we use them. When the Tibetan monks sat under Davidson's scanners, their gamma waves did not declare, "This is ultimate reality." What they revealed was the profound adaptability of the mind. Consciousness is not a closed room. It is a landscape we can cultivate, a theater where new plays can always be staged. When patients in psychedelic therapy spoke of dissolving into cosmic unity, they did not return with formulas or certainties. They returned with perspective, a loosening of the ego's grip, a recognition that the small self is not the whole story. What they gained was not truth in the sense of a map, but truth in the sense of freedom. This is why the metaphor of the theater matters. If we demand the final act, we miss the art of the performance. The veils are not obstacles to be destroyed. They are curtains inviting us deeper into the mystery. Each time we lift one, we are not closer to some ultimate secret. We are simply more awake, more aware, more alive to the infinite richness of perception. And here lies the invitation. The real question is not whether there is a final veil, but which veil are you ready to lift? For some, it may be the veil of distraction, learning to see how much of life slips by while we are lost in thought, reclaiming the present moment through mindfulness. For others, it may be the veil of cultural conditioning, questioning the values we inherited, asking whether they truly reflect our deepest humanity. For others still, it may be the veil of ego, loosening the narrative of me enough to glimpse the interconnectedness of all life. There is no single path. There is no single unveiling. There are as many veils as there are moments, and each one we lift opens not certainty, but possibility. To live this way is not to escape the world, but to inhabit it more fully. To taste, to see, to feel, knowing that perception is partial, but still choosing to engage with presence and wonder. It is to carry humility into science, reverence into philosophy, and compassion into daily life. And so, as this journey through the 7 veils comes to a close, we arrive not at an answer, but at a question. A question that has no formula, no right or wrong response. A question that can only be lived. What veil are you ready to lift? Will you pause in the rush of life and notice the breath, lifting the veil of distraction? Will you challenge the beliefs handed down to you, lifting the veil of conditioning? Will you dare to question the solidity of the self, lifting the veil of ego? Or perhaps you will begin with something simpler, noticing the illusions in your own mind and smiling at their persistence, lifting the veil of certainty. The theater of reality will not end. The curtains will always rise and fall, but every unveiling adds depth to the play. Every insight enriches the performance. And in the end, maybe the greatest wisdom is not to reach behind all the veils, but to dance with them, to marvel at the layers, to see through them while still honoring their beauty. For reality is not a riddle to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. So I leave you with this reflection, not as an answer, but as an invitation. Which veil are you ready to lift today?